Welcome to the writer reads The Dragon in My Shadow, Part 3. I thought about sticking my tongue out at the dragon. It raised its tail and gave me a mental picture of its butt. I started giggling as we walked toward home, and the bus pulled out behind us. I thought I wouldn't sleep. I pruned the rose bushes, weeded the garden, and clipped the edges. I vacuumed the floors, scrubbed the bathroom, and did the ironing. The dragon watched all this activity with a kind of sleepy interest, the weight of its gaze settling over me like a blanket. As I was cooking supper, I realized I was being watched again. The thought worried me, and I pulled the blinds, wondering if I'd locked the back door. The dragon yawned, blinked its eyes, and stretched out on its side, and the feeling of being watched disappeared. You! I snapped, and watched its eyes flash open again. This time, when I felt it stare, I recognized it for what it was. You nearly drove me insane! The dragon smirked and yawned again, eyeing off my supper. I set the place beside it so we could share, and it let me run a wondering hand over the soft leather of its closely meshed scales. Once we'd eaten, I discovered I really could go to sleep after all. The office was buzzing when I arrived the next morning. It went deadly quiet when I came through the door. Chandra had obviously handed in her report. She met me at the desk, leaning forward to whisper, "The boss wants to see you in his office." I looked at her, trying to look puzzled and concerned. When neither of these expressions would settle, I settled for worry. Worried was easy. I could do worried, no problem, because while Chandra had obviously fallen for my trap, I had no assurances the plan would work. If the boss was mad enough, he could fire me without listening to what I had to say, and if he did that, I had lost it all. Don't worry. Chandra had obviously taken my silence as fear and my hesitation as justifiable terror. She placed a sympathetic hand on my shoulder and gave me a reassuring squeeze. I'm sure you'll be all right. I wanted to slap her right there and then, but I was too busy pinning the dragon to the bottom of my handbag so it didn't leap out and claw off her treacherous face. I knew I was in trouble before I went into the office. Just how deep the trouble was, I didn't know until I closed the door behind me. Don't bother taking a seat, the manager said. He sounded tired. You're fired. I stood there and stared at him for a long minute. Effective immediately, he added. When I continued to stand there and say nothing, he tapped the printed report sitting on his desk. This time, Chandra said she hadn't changed a thing. Your work is riddled with mistakes. If we'd based any sort of financial planning on it, we'd have been sunk. When I remained silent, he continued, It's not the sort of mistake I can hide or overlook. You'll have to go. That's not my report, I said. He drew a breath, stopped, looked at the report beneath his hand, looked up at me. It is your report, he said. Chandra dropped it off with hers like she usually does. His tone implied I was somehow negligent, that Sandra's delivery of my files was yet another way she'd been covering for me. My report, I told him, is at the bottom of your in tray. I dropped it off yesterday afternoon while Chandra was on a coffee break. The manager gave me a sharp glance, then reached for his in tray. He found my report where I said it would be and sat back to read it. He did not invite me to sit. I sat anyway, watching as he worked through it from cover to cover. He didn't make it to the bottom of the first page before picking up the one Chandra had delivered. Glancing back and forth between them, he started reading once more. Not wanting to disturb him, I sat very still. 10 minutes passed in perfect silence, and then he looked up. What are you trying to do? He asked. Bankrupt us all? I did not let his question shake me. I shook my head. No, but I believe Chandra has not been submitting the reports I've been giving her. You've been giving her your reports? I sighed and felt myself blush red as a beet. A few weeks ago, I was feeling down and not very sure of myself. Chandra offered to help me. I thought she was a friend. To my horror, I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. I trusted her. She wanted to put our reports in together. She said it would save you time. I stopped, gulping down the urge to cry, and forced my emotions under control. The manager was staring at me, doubt in his eyes. I emailed the report to your secretary so you'd have a time-stamped version from my email address, I said. And I'm sure the text can trace what happened on both our machines after it was sent. Tracy, he called, can you come in here, please? The secretary appeared, looked embarrassed when she saw me sitting in the office. She looked like she wanted to say something to me, but the manager didn't give her a chance. Did you receive an email from Claire yesterday afternoon? He asked. Yes, sir. Could you forward it to me, please? I'll do it now. Tracy left, and I waited. The manager looked expectantly at his computer screen until it chimed to signal an incoming email. While he opened it and read it, I waited some more. After a moment, he raised his head and looked at me. I'd like you to wait in Miss Smiley's office, Claire. I'll have Tracy take you. I trust you can log in from there? When I nodded in affirmative, he summoned his secretary once more. Tracy, can you please set Claire up in Miss Smiley's office? Tracy cast me a curious look, but responded only to her boss's request. Yes, sir. Turning to me, she said, if you'd follow me, please. Her tone was cool, but not unfriendly. Her body language said she wasn't sure how to approach me, that my place on the food chain wasn't clear. I was glad I wasn't the only one feeling a little confused. As we were leaving the office, the manager added one more request. When Claire is settled, can you ask Chandra to come and see me?